Thank you, and I'd like to thank Chancellor Schwartz and the Board of Trustees for conferring on me both an honorary degree and the opportunity to speak to the graduating class. I am grateful and profoundly moved to be recognized in this way by an institution for which I have so much admiration. In turn, I would like to recognize and congratulate this year's graduating class, for whom today's ceremonies mark both a milestone achievement and the beginning of a new chapter. Beginnings can be daunting or exciting, but there's a greater chance that they will be exciting if you're able to do two things: hold on to your curiosity and savor life's serendipities, those moments of unexpected discovery when you find something of value you weren't even seeking, something that can set a future path and transform your life if you're open to the possibility. I suppose I'm speaking from experience. My own path is admittedly an unusual and surprising one. A non-Jewish female who came of age in Australia, I stand here today as a scholar of ancient Judaism trained in the United States and in Israel, but no one would have been more surprised by my journey than my 19-year-old self, who left the Antipodes, drawn by the dream of a liberal arts education in America, and who had no idea what Jewish studies was or that it would come to define her life. And I see my unusual path as a testament to the power of curiosity and the power of serendipity. My unabashed curiosity manifested at a very early age in my fascination with the big questions. Why am I here, I wondered, and why are other people here, and how are we to occupy ourselves in the passage from cradle to grave? At 19, I left my family and traveled halfway around the globe to pursue my academic passion, sampling various majors from philosophy to history to literature, before realizing that it was the study of the world's religions that brought together all of my interests. The study of religion is the study of human beings and how they have grappled throughout history with the big questions of human existence, using reason and rhyme to generate cosmic myths, national histories, philosophical systems, legal structures, ethical writings, ritual, art, story, and song. Religious studies encompassed and engaged all my interests. But two serendipitous events proved to have a decisive impact on the precise direction my path would take. The first occurred in freshman week when I accidentally stumbled into an open house featuring these donut-shaped bread rolls and this odd orange fish I'd never seen, and a thick white cheese not well known in Australia. And people were friendly, and the conversation was stimulating, and I lingered, eventually finding my way into a room where an evening service was being held. And I was captivated by what I experienced and returned the next Friday night to what I soon learned was the egalitarian minyan at the Harvard Hillel. And I returned the next, and then stayed for Oneg Shabbat. And so began a routine that would be a mainstay and oasis of my undergraduate and graduate years. At the same time, I realized that although I was fascinated by many of my religious studies courses, I was inexplicably ignited by my Jewish studies classes and my encounter with Jewish texts and ideas and history and culture. Such passions like taste in music or art or food defy explanation. So sorry. But one moment is etched in my memory as the serendipitous moment that would set my path into what had been until then an unknown and unfamiliar world. I believe it was my sophomore year at Harvard, and there was a course on Jewish history from late antiquity to the Enlightenment, which I thought I wouldn't take because so many appealing courses were on offer that semester. But at the urging of a friend, I went to the introductory lecture given by the late and very great Professor Isidore Tversky, who said, and I paraphrase, "If you've ever taken a course in Western history, you will have been presented with a canonical account of the history of the West, arranged as a coherent narrative, detailing a sequence of significant events in a chain of cause and effect. If you learned anything about the Jews along the way, it was as a footnote. For example, during the Crusades, many Jews were killed. But in this class, you will be presented with an account of the history of the Jews, arranged as a coherent narrative with its own causal sequence of events. And from this perspective, the events of Western history may appear quite differently. After taking this course, for example, the year 1492 will take on new meaning for you." He meant, of course, not the year that Columbus landed in America, but the year that saw the beginning of the expulsion of Jews from the Iberian Peninsula, setting up a wave of immigration throughout Europe and the Mediterranean that would have significant consequences for both Jews and European civilization. And as I've said on many occasions, sitting in that classroom that day, I felt as if Professor Twersky had lifted my head from my shoulders, turned it around, and set it back down. I saw something I had never seen and didn't even suspect was there to be seen. My universe flipped inside out. My perception of the course of Western history was suddenly unmoored and uncertain, and I loved the feeling. The intellectual rush I experienced upon realizing not just that I didn't know everything that was obvious, but that I didn't know there was an entirely other way of viewing and narrating the sweep of human history, an entirely other way of evaluating the impact of events and persons, of perceiving, understanding, and experiencing the world. It was both humbling and exhilarating, and I knew in a flash that stepping as fully as possible into that alternative perspective and understanding, and appreciating it from the inside out as if it were and always had been mine, was the desire of my mind and my heart. And I wanted it to be the labor of my life. It was serendipity that I walked into that Jewish studies class that day to find something I didn't even know I was missing. But that was not the last of the serendipitous discoveries I would make as I plunged deeper and farther into the study of Jewish texts, beginning with the Hebrew Bible, but focusing in particular on classical and rabbinic literature. And as I threw myself into these texts, the next unexpected discovery I made was that the notion of a single Judeo-Christian tradition was a myth, asserting sameness where there was difference, and stifling our ability to see the crucial and generative role that Jewish difference has played throughout human history and continues to play today. Indeed, the Judeo-Christian myth obscures what I was beginning to see as the radical and profoundly countercultural voice of the Hebrew Bible, the rabbinic corpus, and much of the subsequent Jewish tradition. Consider, for example, the Hebrew Bible's countercultural conception of the divine, its radical assertion of the dignity of humans, its rejection of the illusory obsession with immortality in favor of the pursuit of morality as the defining labor of humankind. These innovative ideas stood against the popular mythologies of the day that identified the gods with various natural forces, none wholly good, and attributed evil to the activity of demons who possessed a metaphysical reality. Against the mythological conception of the cosmos, the opening chapters of Genesis present a single and morally good deity, distinct from and sovereign over nature. Instead of an amoral universe of competing powers, Genesis 1 asserts the essential goodness of the cosmos, a cosmos that God creates not by defeating divine enemies in a symphony of violence, but by imposing order on the inert and demythologized elements of nature, a cosmos that God declares 6 times to be good, and after the creations of humans, very good. In Genesis, evil is not an inherent primordial principle, a metaphysical reality stemming from the activity of an independent demonic realm against which humans are virtually powerless. Evil is a moral reality that arises from the exercise of human moral freedom in defiance of all that is good. But if evil lies within the realm of human agency and responsibility, so does good. And so humans become not the despised menials of the gods, as in the mythologies of Israel's neighbors, but as we heard earlier, the beloved partners of God, charged with the sacred and perpetual task of sustaining and extending the essential goodness of the cosmos. These empowering ideas lie at the heart of the Bible's revolutionary ethical vision, and to this day, they fuel the Jewish aspiration to fight for a better world and tikkun olam. If the Hebrew Bible broke with the culture of its day by emphasizing the difference between Israel's God and the mythological gods of Israel's neighbors, the Talmudic rabbis broke with the culture of their day by emphasizing the difference between Israel's God and the abstract God of the philosophers. Against philosophers who divinized reason, the rabbis insisted that God is not reducible to reason. Against philosophers who conceived of divine law as a static and immutable rational order embedded in nature, the rabbis insisted on divine law as a dynamic and evolving set of teachings, a Torah embedded in history and entrusted to God's human partners for its ongoing elaboration. Against philosophers who posited the existence of a single immutable truth, the rabbis espoused a healthy skepticism toward dogmatic truth claims. Their modes of biblical interpretation made possible and encouraged the generation of multiple, even contradictory meanings, all of which were rooted in the divine. And their modes of legal and moral argumentation cultivated epistemological humility by deferring final answers and directing the participants' attention not to which view singular is right, but to which views plural are possible, and among those which ones plural might be good. Most important, the labyrinthine arguments of the Babylonian Talmud remind us that no interpretation of the divine law is so absolutely final, that every answer is provisional, because there is always the possibility of an unanticipated detail that might demand the law's revision, that when grappling with a legal question or a moral dilemma, we can't be lazy like the absolutist or the cynic, both of whom will whip out a fixed and preset answer, the absolutist from an abundance of self-righteous conviction, the cynic from a lack of any conviction. Neither engages in the hard work of moral reasoning, but the Talmud reminds us in sugya after relentless sugya that the pursuit of morality is the defining task of humankind, and that with each dawning day, we must roll up our sleeves, pay attention to the details, activate our values, and figure out all over again what the just and the good look like now, here, today. So, if I may add a third recommendation to the two with which I began. In addition to cultivating curiosity and savoring serendipity, look to the tradition championed by this very institution and break with the culture of your day, and make the radical choice to believe that the world is imbued with an essential goodness, that the dignity of humans is inalienable, that no amount of power, wealth, or status brings immortality, that the moral battle can never be dodged, only ever joined, that the moral absolutist is as dangerous as the moral cynic, that the antidote to both is an optimistic skepticism that combines epistemological humility with a capacity for wonder. Prioritize proving yourself to be good over proving yourself to be right. And whatever your chosen occupation or vocation, hold on to your moral compass in turbulent times. Remember that you are not powerless, and insist, even when all evidence points to the contrary, that despite our capacity for evil, the capacity of humans for virtue will never be entirely extinguished. And then make it your life's countercultural work to find that virtue and be its loudest and most ardent champion. Congratulations to the class of 2025.